Hello, welcome to Screen Talk with yours truly, Nomfanelo. So, this is part two of my reaction to Hollywood's movie-going crisis. This is from The Town with Matt Belloni. I'm reacting to his podcast episode that talks about the movie going crisis. Now, um, you could check out part one if you haven't done so already. So, essentially, doing continuation reaction to this conversation, which I would say is so far so good in terms of points and all that stuff. So, let's continue.
The tech companies, that's the big question mark. What the different tech companies are doing. We know what Netflix is doing, very clear about that. Amazon is now saying they're going to release 12 to 14 movies in theaters a year. They've been saying that for several years. We'll see if this time it's actually true. Apple is an interesting one. And I wanted to ask Joe about Apple because obviously you made your movie F1 for Apple and you're making your next movie there. What have you been able to glean from your conversations there about their aspirations for releasing movies, not just yours, but all their movies in theaters?
So just before play that, so yes, I did see a few weeks ago Amazon announced that they'll be announcing, what was it, 12 to 14 movies theatrically starting next year, which I would say is a good sign, I would say, in regards to tech companies committing to theaters and all that stuff, because we've seen Netflix at times they'll put their movies in theaters, but only for a limited release and all that stuff. I know, like the Narnia situation, Greta Gerwig's movie is quite fascinating in regard to that conversation. Apple, I believe they announced, I don't know if it was earlier this year or last year, where they're going to stop putting movies theatrically for the most part. I mean, we'll see if that changes once F1 comes out in June, if that does well. But yeah, let's see what Joe has to say here.
Because they pulled back.
Yeah, I mean, that was, one of the reasons we went with Apple for F1 is because of their commitment to the theatrical release of the film. And my experience there has been phenomenal all the way through. It's been an amazing experience. And, we're partnering with Warner Brothers for the distribution of F1.
And your next movie?
Is also with Apple, but we don't have a distributor.
Oh, you don't?
For that
Okay.
one, no. So I think Apple...
We're free. We'd love to work with you.
Yeah. Let's talk after. Yeah. So I don't know in terms of Apple's overall strategy, other than that they've been very supportive of making sure F1 is a giant theatrical release all around the world.
But when you see them, like what happened with Wolves, which was the John Watts movie, Brad Pitt, and they committed to theaters, then pulled back. Does that worry you?
Yeah, I previously talked about that situation, which was quite weird, where they were going to put in theaters and last minute pulled out and all that stuff. I mean, even though the movie itself wasn't that great, it was just unfortunate that situation happened the way it did. So.
Not on F1, no.
Not on F1, okay.
No, this is a movie we made for the big screen, and yeah, they're 100% committed.
But some have described F1 as a make it or break it moment for Apple in theaters. Like, if F1 works as it's supposed to, and it seems like it will, they are going to continue to make these bets. If it doesn't, you're going to see Apple pull back and not commit to theaters.
No pressure. Yeah, no, I mean, we made it. We made it. Again, this is a movie that we made to not only appeal to racing fans, but to everyone, in the same way you don't need to be an expert on naval aviation to enjoy Top Gun. And, you know, I've been able to show it to a couple audiences, and so far the feedback's been really great. So we're very happy.
And you have the theatrical commitment for your next film at Apple as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Similar. Eduardo, I wanted to.
So I guess it seems like here, based off his response here, that I guess Apple will release his films, at least ones that he's agreed to and all that stuff, in theaters, I guess, which is nice. But I'm wondering if that's going to be extended to like anyone else that wants to work with Apple, or if Apple's going to be putting select movies in theaters versus what they'll put out on their platform only. I mean, we shall see what happens on that front.
Ask you about this Narnia situation, because we saw some news where, you know, Greta Gerwig got IMAX and Netflix to commit to a 4-week window, but a 2-week commitment in theaters for IMAX only. There's been some reporting at Puck and elsewhere about some of the other theater chains not being so happy about that and not having committed to playing that movie. Theaters generally will not play Netflix movies because of their commitment to streaming first. Where do you stand on that?
First, don't pull any punches, okay? Where do I stand on that? I mean, first of all, I think Brett is a fantastic talent. And I will say that this movie doesn't come out for 18 months. So we don't even know the economics or anything. We don't know the conditions. We don't know anything about it. I will tell you a couple of facts. First fact is, I'm a very strong proponent of the 45-day window. And giving a 30-day window, not even pivot to subscription.
To the largest subscription service in the US.
It is not in the best interest of exhibition to do that. Secondly, I would say, and this is another fact, there are 2 movies on that date. You have the new Hunger Games by Lionsgate, and that book has sold 3 times more books than Mockingjay. And they have a movie on that date that had an IMAX commitment. Disney has a movie date for that date. I assume it's going to have IMAX. And who should we support? The studios who give us all these movies with all these box office with very long windows. I mean, Disney has the longest window. Or the studio who will maybe give us 1 movie ever and have a very short window to subscription.
So you won't play the Narnia movie in your Regal?
So, yeah, like I wanted to talk about IMAX, as he pointed out. Yeah, it seems like a lot of filmmakers, they want to have their movies in IMAX, but the thing is with IMAX, they don't have a lot of screens in theaters and all that stuff. So I do hope that they plan to put more IMAX screens in theaters. I don't know how that's going to work logistically, but that at some point, that's probably that what needs to happen, and so that, you know, everyone can have their movies shown in IMAX and all that stuff. But yeah, back to this conversation.
IMAX theaters.
It's 18 months down the road. None of these 3 films have been shot by now, have been filmed, so we don't know what's going to happen. Dates could change. I truly hope that Greta can convince Netflix to give it a longer window, and then we could play it. But it would not be in our best interest to play it.
Okay, so unless they
right
extend that window, which they have said that they're not going to do.
Probably change the date because
Greta's very charming. She can do a charm offensive here.
And she's very powerful. I mean, she's the first director in history to have her first 3 films nominated for an Oscar. I mean, Christopher Nolan can pull it off.
How dare you? Okay, so separate topic. I wanted to ask Peter about the decision-making that goes into which films get which windows. And you mentioned that it's a conversation, it's data-driven, it's very strategic, but take us into a little bit of the decision-making process on these films, and which ones get the 17-day, which one get the longer, which one get the full Nolan treatment.
Sure. I don't know that there's a black box here. We look at each film individually. Films, we have a very diverse slate at our company, as you know, and we make films of all sort of different shapes and sizes. And we look at the box office potential. We look at the home entertainment potential. Certain films like, Jurassic or our big animated films tend to be in that much later to transactional, and then even further, much later to streaming, to subscription service. I just did it also.
Yes, we all do it.
Sometimes we may feel like a film doesn't open up, and we don't. If we put a film like Black Bag in theaters and it doesn't reach the potential, we don't take it out of the theater. It stays in the theater. We then augment that theatrical experience with this digital release. And, ironically, what we see very frequently is when we bring it into the market digitally, we see the theatrical hold improve, which may sound counterintuitive.
I've heard that before. I don't understand it.
I can cite you numerous examples. Well, it may be a function of two things. One is there's not as big of an overlap as you might think, that these are, in fact, slightly different audiences. And the second thing is that there is a whole nother round of marketing. And if you're really targeting two different audiences with that marketing, the people who were maybe more inclined to go to the theater see that marketing and then they go. And we have a lot of examples of where that's happened.
Yeah, just as a side note, I do want to make a video where I want to talk about marketing in movies because I do think marketing is a key factor in why some movies tend to fail at the box office. Because I keep seeing online people point out that they've rarely seen any promos for the movie and all that stuff. And I think it's clear that with the avenues that were available, let's say decades ago, such as print, media advertisements, TV advertisements, all that stuff compared to now, where it's mostly online, social media, and all that stuff. Yeah, that kind of makes a difference in all that stuff. So, yeah, I do plan to make that video. So stay tuned for that one.
That is interesting. You on the last Jurassic, you did that. You put it on transactional a little earlier than I think most would have expected when it was in theaters. Is that correct?
I don't quote me on this because I don't remember exactly, but I would assume that was certainly after the fifth weekend.
Yeah, my point was that it can happen even on the biggest movies. You can try to shorten.
It can. That's it, not on Jurassic. I think we had the Jurassic window plan. There wasn't a pivot there. Okay. You look at the performance that we did on Wicked, and that was 6 weekends, right? So we really, again, as I said, I think we really fine-tuned this optimization to try to look at each film individually to find that right date.
Are you planning to do the same thing with Wicked on New Year's Eve for Wicked 2?
It's a bit away, but I'd like to see us do that if we can. I think that was a very, very successful decision. There were a lot of people that stay home on New Year's, and as I think you know, I've heard you report on it, we did an enormous amount of business.
Well, you put out a press release, but
there's that.
What is? Can you share with us the ultimate PVOD number for Wicked? What you guys made on PVOD?
I think it's fair to say it's the biggest PVOD title we've ever had. So let's call it somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million, which is our share. So if you just round that up by 2, that's the equivalent of $200 million of box office. And again,
well, it's equivalent to you, not to the theater.
I understand. I understand. I'm just saying that enables us to have a big slate. When you can have that kind of success, we don't pocket that money. We put that money right back into the production slate.
Joe, I had a question for you about gripes. We often hear what the studios gripe about the theaters, with commercials and pricing and quality, all the things that you always have. What about the filmmakers? If I ask you what gripes you have about exhibition, what do filmmakers talk about? In the clubhouse of the DGA, what are people when they're smoking cigars? I have this image of you and like Chris Nolan and Spielberg sitting around with like your whiskey and cigars talking about theaters.
I think it's to just hitting the reference quality of the film, in terms of the picture and the sound. Now that I'm testing F1, we go into theaters and set them up for the day. And almost every time we find that a couple of speakers are out, the picture's not where it should be. Sometimes, things aren't even working that should be working. I won't name names, but just keeping the theaters at the standard that they should be, because, that's why we want people to go to the theater, because it's better than what they experience at home. And with a proper setup, and it doesn't have to be Atmos and laser, but just a proper 5.1 theater setup, it's going to blow away anything you can have in your house.
Yep, I certainly agree with that. Yeah, I think like I never, at least of recent, had issues, technical issues in regards to the theaters that I've went to watch a movie and all that stuff. But there's always room for improvement, absolutely, on that front.
So I think just that minimum, there used to be this like THX standard, back in the 90s, which I loved, knowing that the theater had been set. And I think that's why IMAX is so popular with big films, because that is a theater chain that prides itself on always having the fader at 7 and, the picture set properly.
But I would say for like the IMAX theater that I go to at my local Cineplex theater, I do wish that the chairs were better and all that stuff. I wish like they had the reclining chairs, or make the chairs a bit wider and all that stuff. But that's neither here or there.
So, that's certainly one thing that I think all filmmakers, would love to see as a standard across all theaters.
And how about the studio perspective, Tom? Biggest gripes with theaters?
Well, the most valuable real estate that this industry has is trailer play. That's where we cross-pollinate success. When Universal has a big hit, I get to enjoy that when and if I get trailer play. But
Yeah, I just saw not too long ago, apparently Paramount mentioned that in regards to trailers and all that stuff, it should be kept to a minimum in theaters and all that stuff. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something along those lines, like keep it to a minimum, have no commercials and all that stuff. And at least like where I go to, yeah, they do often love to show commercials. I do find it's weird because they'll have commercials and then they'll show trailers and then they'll show a commercial or two, maybe another trailer before showing the movie and all that stuff. So yeah, I do think commercials should probably be kept to a minimum and all that stuff. But I don't mind. I don't mind watching trailers in theaters. I love watching trailers in theaters and all that stuff. At least it gets people, at least for those especially that are not online often, to see what's coming out and all that stuff. Because I mean that's a great way for advertising at the end of the day. But yeah, I think for trailers maybe no more than, I think 20 minutes is the maximum. Maybe too much. Probably 15, around 15, 20 minutes is maximum, I would say. But yeah, that's what I have to say in terms of the trailer conversations.
I, as an independent, don't always get trailer play. I have to go buy and auction off that trailer play with every other studio. And we play a big game, but it's very expensive. And I would say that is a self-fulfilling outcome. If only the big players get access to trailer play and it's not curated to possibly put in one or two independents for that first opening weekend. If you do not cross-pollinate there, you're only serving the big gun movies.
Yeah, because I find like, so Cineplex, for example, at least from my experience, they mostly showed trailers from a lot of the big studios and all that stuff. They'll show trailers from indie studios here and there. I think it really depends on the film that you're watching, because usually if you're watching something that's more, let's say, adult oriented, they'll show trailers that's for adults, or if you're watching something that's for kids, and they'll put trailers out for kids and all that stuff. But yeah, usually they love to play. I imagine most theaters are like this. They love to play trailers mainly from the big studio movies, but they'll have indie trailers from indie studios every now and then. I think again too, it depends on the movie that you're watching in the theater, and also because I think they tend to cater um, the trailers and all that stuff depending on the movie you're watching. I'm not sure if it's like this for indie theaters specifically. It's been a while since I've been to Bytown Cinema. I think they just love to show trailers like of what is going to be playing at their theater specifically, and all that stuff, which is mostly indie stuff. So yeah, like I do. Yeah, I would love to see more indie trailers and all that stuff. But again, I think that depends on the movie that you're watching in the room at the time.
And I think that, you know, an exhibition chain like the Alamo Drafthouse curates. They'll put a small movie in front of a big family film or a big studio film, and they make more money and they sell more alcohol because it's a food and beverage concept on their independent movies. And so I would say that there's something to us eliminating some of the short-term gain by selling that trailer play and allowing there to be more curation. The other thing I would say is a lot of big box theater chains are excellent at thinking nationally. And I would say that we need to work together to focus more on a local communal ground game so that audiences feel a kinship to their theater.
Yeah, because I know Bytown Cinema, they often show advertisements for local places and all that stuff. Cineplex, maybe again, it's been a while, but not so much as far as I could recall. But I do think also too, because I know Cineplex, they used to have like the halftime show, where I guess um, they had a host where they interview people with their films and all that stuff. Because I do think if theaters do have like their own version of like a halftime show or pre-show, whatever it's called, maybe that could be the time to maybe showcase more indie movies and all that stuff. Because I know, yeah, like they'll use that time to show a lot of interviews, like I know, like either from TIFF, from festivals, and all that stuff. So maybe, yeah, they could have more room, like to show indies and all that stuff on that front. Yeah.
Not the movies.
Maybe some of that $2.2 billion that we were told theaters are investing can be that. What are you spending the $2.2 billion on?
I mean, first of all, I fully agree. I completely agree. I do not feel attacked, and I think you're right on, and we need to improve the experience without a doubt. The $2.2 billion are going to improve our assets.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, there was an announcement that the theater chains are going to spend $2.2 billion to upgrade theaters and add other amenities. Is this about making the experience better, or is it about adding zip lines to the lobby?
Oh. Every exhibitor has their choices, right? I will tell you what Regal is doing.
No disrespect to zip lines. I actually think
No,
they
it's
should
great.
have that. But
I mean, money, unfortunately, is limited, and we will invest in anything that gives a good return. Where we see the biggest returns are better seats, laser projectors, because you have to have the perfect presentation, good sound. And I also hear you, Tom, about the trailers and about giving a good experience, because it not only stops there. We have to be a customer-centric industry, and we have to make sure that we're giving a good experience to our customers.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, it should always be a focus on the customers and all that stuff. From the moment you enter the theater to the time you leave and all that stuff. And hopefully one of the improvements that they need to fix with theaters across the board is prices, because the prices like admission are expensive, and also food prices, they're way expensive and all that stuff. And I know like Cineplex and I'm sure other theaters have their versions, like they have like their own membership where you could get 10 to 20% off. I don't remember the exact amount and all that stuff. But still though, like it's expensive. It's expensive. But yeah, also too, I think yeah, employees at theaters need to be treated better and all that stuff. Customer service needs to improve, obviously. I mean, there's so much, but I mean, that's just off the top of my head for now.
Customers that our execution is excellent, that our projection is perfect, that our presentation is fantastic, that the seat is comfortable, that we get good customer service. So those are the things we're working on, the 2.2 billion. In the case of Regal, the big chunk that's part of us is going to improve our current assets, HVAC units, projectors, seats, etc. And if we find something that builds a better mousetrap, we'll do it too.
Where do you stand on free-for-all theaters? Phones, talking, all of it.
Me personally, not a big fan. I actually go on the other side where I think, I mean, we do play that commercial at the beginning saying, please turn off your phone. And I think we actually should police it even more. That's my personal opinion.
Do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Not this theater is designated for you to snap your friends throughout the movie.
I've heard that we should probably bring back younger audiences by having texting auditoriums, and that we should sell weed in our theaters, and that we should do all these other things. And
certain movies only.
Listen, I'm not saying we're never going to test it. I mean, we should test everything.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Like, I would prefer just having no like phones be used in theaters at all, period, because clearly they're distracting and all that stuff. And then people tend to use cell phones to record the movie or take snapshots of the movie, which is illegal and is considered piracy and all that stuff. Because I did a video where I talked about Wicked with that situation when people leaked, what was it, the title card for the movie. This was before it was announced it was a part one and all that stuff, which I know it frustrated a lot of people when that situation was unfolding. So yeah, because I remember like since that I saw like Cineplex, they post like that video before trailers to not text on your phone, don't have the light on, all that sorts of stuff. I mean, which is nice, but you still see some people doing that stuff despite, knowing that's not okay and all that stuff. It's frustrating.
Well, it all gets back to meeting the customer where they are, right?
Yeah.
Because you've seen the same studies I have. There was a Deloitte study last week about Gen Z and the kinds of stars and content that's meaningful to them. And more, this is not news, more and more the creators and YouTubers and digital stars are the stars of today. It's not who's on the marquee at the movie theater. And if you want to bring in that audience, you sort of have to meet them where they are and say, listen, if you want to be snapping your friends during a movie, maybe we have an option for that.
We have one show out of 100, and maybe we try it. Maybe we test it. Again, the way we stand, or the way my own personal opinion is, I saw that study and it was very weird because in our case, the survey I mentioned, these Gen Z is actually going more to the theater, and they're going more than they went 6 months ago. So our survey actually showed the exact opposite on the one hand. And I do think that movies provide escape from their digital life. There's Michael Moses mentioned about the third space in our meeting the other day, and how we need to make the theaters the third space. People do actually eventually want to be away from their phones.
Meaning not digital, not home, but
the third. I mean,
you're not work, not home, the third space. Yeah.
The mall used to be the third space,
right?
And we kind of lost that. And I think theaters, if we provide a good experience, could be that third space. but also theaters will give you the best experience. And to somehow, a theater kind of sequesters you from the outside world because we turn off the lights, we're going to police the hell out of texting, and you know that when you're there, you concentrate on that thing.
And if you degrade that with allowing texting and all the other stuff, then it just becomes no different than sitting on your couch. Right? How do you feel about that? You know, do you, as a filmmaker, is the theater a church that you should not, bring all that stuff into, or do you want to be more accessible?
Well, the reason I like that idea is all the people that want to text can go to a different screening than the one I'm going to go to. So that's great. I think, having a teenager in my house, you see that their habits are different and they're bombarded with so much more information than we were at their age. But I truly believe that if we tell great stories and make movies that are worthy of being shown on the big screen, they're going to show up.
Yeah.
I do wonder though, like having, let's say, certain auditoriums not have phones, and then others you're allowed to have phone. I don't know if that works at the end of the day, in my opinion, because like, how are you going to decide what movie that applies to? Because I just don't. I don't know how that's gonna happen logistically. I don't see how that's gonna happen and all that stuff. I prefer not. I just prefer, again, having no phones. Period. Like what, while in the theater and all that stuff, because I think we all want to be immersed into what we're watching on screen and all that stuff. Because I think people, they should not treat the theater as their own personal living room, because if they want to do all the texting, all this stuff, then they should do it at home. Because, what's the point of spending so much money and they're just going to be sitting there texting or doing whatever on their phone if they're not going to be engaged on the screen? It just does not make sense to me to have designated auditoriums for texting and all that stuff. Just do that stuff at home.
It's just a challenge. I texted a very prominent media analyst that I was doing this panel. I said, what should I talk about? He just responded, LOL, good luck. Because like the thinking is that we can dance around these issues all day long, but at the end of the day, the theaters are under attack from so many different places that it's not going to get back to what it was pre-COVID. And how do you must have your own investors and analysts saying that to you all the time. How do you respond? Yeah.
I think we just need more movies, more variety.
You think more movies is the answer?
Well, again.
Yes, I have been saying that we need to have more variety, because you can't just be putting out, certain types of movies out there thinking that, it's automatically going to make money because of the genre, the IP, or whatever the case may be, because we have seen examples where they may fit that criteria, but it failed. I mean, The Flash is a notable example and all that stuff. But yes, we need more variety so we could get all sorts of people attending the theater and all that stuff.
Number of movies is down 25%. Box office is down 28%. It's almost a perfect correlation. We need more variety.
I think that's the key, variety. Not more movies, more variety.
Well, let's have both.
Please. How about better?
Here's the thing. 14,000 movies get submitted to Sundance every year. 100 or so get programmed. Only 2 or 3 big buys. More movies isn't going to increase the quality necessarily.
I mean, we hear demands there's pent-up demand for comedies, for romance. So again, I would say more movies and more variety.
More wide releases is really what you're talking about. In the last couple of years, you've lost an entire studio with Fox going into Disney. And some of the other remaining studios are in a different place than maybe they were 3 or 4 years ago. Hopefully all that comes back. The addition of, Amazon sort of increasing its production and some other things happening. I think that's what he's talking about. I don't think he's talking about the Sundance slate.
Well, also one genre that seems to be everywhere is horror. Is there too much horror in the marketplace? We see, everyone says no, but we've seen decreasing returns over the last 6 8.
I mean, I don't know about too much horror for me. Like, I'm not a big horror fan myself, so I can't really answer this question, but I do think there needs to be the quality and all that stuff, because certain horror movies, of course, are going to do well, while others not so much. And I think this year so far, horror, there's been a rocky start with that one, because what we had, the Wolfman that came out back in January, that did not do well at the box office. I don't remember other movies that came out so far, but has it's been off to a rocky start. Hopefully, it can improve later on this year. We shall see on that one.
8 months. Last weekend, we had 2 horror movies open opposite each other. Neither got above 10 million, I don't believe. Like, are the studios leaning into that too much?
Good horror.
Okay, but are the studios leaning on that because it's considered one of the few remaining genres that is theatrical?
I think, the action films, sci-fi films, the best romantic comedy we've proven can be theatrical. A little movie known, Sisu, right? Very small foreign language film, incredible action film, incredible. We used to see those movies all the time. 20 years ago, made from all over the world. We very rarely see that kind of movie now. And you know what? Seeing Lionsgate's presentation this morning, seeing John Wick back, I mean, yes, I do think there's room for multiple genres.
John Wick is a franchise. Most of those movies that Lionsgate showed, and no disrespect to them, but a lot of them seemed like they're going to struggle to be theatrical.
But I think there's room for other action films. And there are certain genres that have been overlooked and underserved. And you know what? Also being made at a certain budget that you can scale, under 35. I do think there's a mid-level film that's not a programmer, that's authentic, that's character-driven, that's auteur-driven, that is missing from the marketplace. And the reason being is there's not enough development in this industry. We're moving too fast, making 2 movies to serve the box value. And I think...
Yep. I mean, I don't really have any notes, but yep.
That's a real thing we need to consider.
Would say we also need more marketing, more awareness. And that's not only, this is not me putting it on studios or distribution. This is...
Well, they do pay for the marketing and distribution.
Well, we should help a lot. And we market a lot better.
Are you volunteering?
Not to pay, I mean, to market, yeah. to give them money, no. No, but I am volunteering to do something better. And again, I started this by saying there is more cooperation between distribution and exhibition than there has ever been. We have databases, we have information. We are able to better market to customers. And we need more awareness. And I think both of us should do it to get more, I think, so again, more movies, more marketing, longer window, and better theaters.
Yeah, I agree. Told it that again. No notes, no notes.
Those are the 4 things that I think we need to get back to where we were.
And too much horror is not a problem. You guys release a lot.
You're looking at me? Yeah, I mean, it's part of the DNA of our company. I mean, we're fortunate enough to work with some of the best horror filmmakers in the world, with Jason Blum and James Wan and Jordan Peele, Robert Eggers, Nosferatu. I mean, I think if you make the right kind of films, I think you can do really well. We've got 3 big horror franchises this year that we're really excited about, and then we continue to mix in an original or a couple of originals every year. And you're not going to have franchises if you don't have originals, and so we continue to feed that pipeline, and we've had a lot of success with it, as you know, and so have you.
Yeah, so we have
last year. You had a huge title, right?
Huge title. But Terrifier 3, 54 million domestically, another 35 internationally, unrated, 2,700 screens. I have not seen that before. Minimal marketing budget. I think people want something different. They want movies to go farther.
All right, last question. Since COVID, we are down from 41,000 theaters to about 35,000. Where does that end? Where is the number of screens going to decline to, and what is the new sweet spot, in your opinion? Yeah.
I think there's a continued renewal of theaters. I mean, in the case of Regal went through bankruptcy. And we're responsible for many of those screens that were lost.
Yep.
Now, those were economically non-viable. So it's not terrible that those screens went away. Could that continue happening in a small scale? I do think so. I don't think it's going to be radically a huge number of screens that are going to go away. I don't think so. I think there's just some leases come up. If it makes sense, you renew it. If not, you don't. But I don't see a massive decline in screens unless something horrible happens.
And what are you guys projecting at Universal?
I wouldn't know. I think not to be controversial, but obviously we would rather have fewer, more successful theaters. I think, in my neighborhood in California.
That's okay. That's interesting. I mean, I prefer more theaters, but hopefully he explains his point here.
There's 6 or 7 theaters within a 5-mile radius that can't be healthy. And I'm not suggesting that there should be consolidation because I don't have insight into that kind of data, but fewer successful theaters has to be a good thing for the business.
Can someone please buy the Cinerama?
But I do also wonder if you have fewer theaters, though, it'll probably prevent some people, like especially if, let's say, they don't live close to those theaters, but it's like their only option to go there and all that stuff. So I don't know. I disagree about having less theaters because I believe the more the merrier and all that stuff, as long as they're successful and all that stuff, whether that's from a big chain or from a small or an indie scale and all that stuff. So that's my thoughts on that.
Please.
Seriously, what is going on there?
Can we all not get together and demand that theater opens? I mean, it's such a huge loss for all of Los Angeles and the industry, especially for my movies, definitively.
Everybody has tried.
I know they won't sell it.
More
It's so
than once.
bizarre.
Yeah, everybody would fight for that.
Why won't they sell it?
I don't know. You have to ask them. I think they still want to do something there at some point.
It was perfectly fine when it closed at the pandemic to simply open it up. Any given movie that we would release, we could gross $90,000 a weekend there. And all of that sort of supply has moved to other theaters, moved to Burbank, AMC, but I feel like there's a desert that exists in Hollywood and it needs to be filled, including the West Side.
And finally, Joe, would you prefer your movies be released on 4,000 regular theaters or half the amount, but all PLFs?
Sophie's choice.
I love the IMAX experience. I love the PLF experience. Again, I think it's about giving people something different than they can get at home. And F1 is a movie we made for the biggest, loudest theater near you. So yeah, I guess I'd go PLF selfishly.
Preferably a mix. So people, if they couldn't get there, you would have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that wraps up our special.
All right, that's concludes this podcast episode of The Town. That's a fascinating conversation. Interesting to learn all the different points of view and all that stuff. But yeah, the movie-going thing, yes, there's still debate on all that stuff. So yeah, interesting thoughts on that. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video, part 2. Let me know what you guys think about the episode. Do you guys have any feelings towards how people go to the theater? What needs to improve? What should be kept? And all that stuff. Let me know in the comments section. So also too, if you want to support me, you can visit buymeacoffee.com/Nomfanelo, where you could donate either one time or monthly donation. It'll be very appreciated. Also to there, I've been posting a lot of posts there, so you could always check those out. And also you can follow me there on that platform. So yeah, check out Buy Me a Coffee. Also, too, if you want to follow me on social media, my links are in the description. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you next time.